that we return to file item 69. Senator Huff, I believe you passed previously in order to work out some issues with colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Are you prepared to take this item up?
I am, Mr. President.
Then let's ask the Secretary to please read.
Senate Bill 172 by Senator Huff, enacting school districts.
Mr. President, members, the Open Enrollment Act requires the Department of Education to create a list of 1,000 schools that are required to offer parents the option to transfer their child to any other school of their choice. Schools on the list of 1,000 are currently deemed low achieving according to specific formula prescribed by law. It was never meant to have a stigma, but that's what it has become. So this bill would find another name that is more socially acceptable, and I agreed to work with the Chair of Senate Education, Senator Lowenthal, as it moves through the process to make sure it's something we're comfortable with. What we have right now is not as comfortable because there's some other meanings, but it's a cooperative effort to take the stigma away from it by calling the low performing. We certainly didn't want to have that, and so I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Alquist. Anderson. Aye. Berryhill. Blakeslee. Calderon. Cannella. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. De Leon. DeSaulnier. Aye. Dutton. Emerson. Aye. Evans. Fuller. Aye. Gaines. Aye. Hancock. Harmon. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Aye. LaMalfa. Aye. Leno. Aye. Ted Lieu. Aye. Carol Lieu. Lowenthal. Aye. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Padilla. Pavley. Price. Aye. Rubio. Aye. Runner. Semidian.
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Vargas. Aye. Walters. Aye. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Padilla. Aye. Blakeslee. Aye.
Please call the absent members.
Berryhill. Calderon. Correa. Aye. De Leon. Dutton. Evans. Hancock. Aye. Carol Lieu. Aye. Runner. Dutton. Aye.
Call the absent members.
Berryhill. Calderon. De Leon. Evans. Runner.
Ayes 35, noes 0. The bill is passed. Members, we're going to try and wrap up our business relatively expeditiously in the next few minutes so that we can allow the Appropriations Committee to meet, who will be followed by the budget hearing today. I do want to go to a couple of items that are time sensitive. Senator Alquist, I believe you have file item 83, an urgency item.
Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Please, Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 630 by Senator Alquist, enacting to health facilities and declaring the urge thereof to take effect immediately.
Thank you. SB 630, an urgency measure, is a narrowly crafted patient safety bill to help expectant mothers obtain optimal care when they arrive in labor at Stanford Hospital's emergency room. Stanford Hospital, which is physically connected to Lucile Packard Children's Hospital, has an emergency room but does not have a labor and delivery unit, so it uses Packard's labor and delivery unit only 600 feet away down an interior corridor. The problem occurs when expectant mothers arrive at Stanford, and under current law governing transfers from the emergency room results in delays of up to 90 minutes. On average, 29 women in labor arrive at Stanford's emergency room every month. They wait on average 54 minutes before getting transferred to Packard's labor and delivery unit, which is only a 5-minute wheelchair or gurney ride away. And as a mom who went through natural childbirth twice, I can tell you A wait of 54 minutes is a very long time. The solution for this is SB 630, which provides the statutory authority needed for DPH to approve such an MOU, one that is narrowly tailored to address this unique problem for these two sister hospitals. SB 630 maintains the provisions of Health and Safety Code Section 1317 regarding emergency services and care of patients, while permitting a narrow exception for Stanford and Packard to best care for their moms in labor. I vote. It is an urgency bill.
Debate and discussion. Senator Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in support of this measure. This bill effectively eliminates a bureaucratic barrier to common sense transfer from patients from one hospital to another. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Members, is there any objection to substituting our unanimous roll call on this item? Any objection to the use of our unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing no objection, it will be ayes 36, noes 0. The bill is passed. Ayes 36, noes 0 on the urgency. Ayes 36, noes 0 on the bill. Senator Blakeslee, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
Under motions and resolutions.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I move that we take up item 26, SB 356 on the file.
This is file item 26.
A matter relating to state parks.
This is a veto override.
Yes, President Pro Tem, this is a veto override.
Senator Steinberg, do you wish to be recognized?
I believe I have the floor.
You do. Would you extend the courtesy to Senator Steinberg?
I would like to take this matter up.
I believe Senator Steinberg has a question of the author.
Very good. I
Senator
accept
Steinberg?
the question.
I'd ask Senator Blakeslee what the subject matter of the bill is for the benefit of my colleagues.
State parks. And I'll be presenting the bill as is proper when a member takes up his bill.
That's fine. I'll speak after Senator Blakeslee. Thank you.
Members, we are at file item 26. Senator Blakeslee, Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 356 by Senator Blakeslee, enacting to state parks and making an appropriation therefore.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I appreciate the opportunity to present this measure before the body. This is the second time I will have had an opportunity to do so. We heard an impassioned presentation a few moments ago about the importance of protecting our state parks in the state of California, and I concur that we need to take every action. This is a measure which, if passed by this body today with a two-thirds vote, would constitute an override of Governor Brown's veto. An override of the governor's veto, of course, is a two-thirds measure, and I think it's appropriate that we take this measure up since it went out from this body unanimously, and the governor has continued to identify cuts he anticipates will occur, including to Department of Parks and Recreation. I have probably more parks, I think, than perhaps any other sitting senator on the floor today, so it's a matter of great importance to me. And although last year we had opportunities to try and find solutions to both revenues and cuts in this building, the governor has decided on his own that he has no interest in working with this body on a grand compromise, but instead is planning to circumvent this legislature and go directly to the voters. That, of course, is his right. However, it is our right, when we find ways to keep state parks open without increasing costs to the general fund, that we examine the possibility of a veto override. The governor gave a very interesting speech yesterday, and it's lovely we have such a dreamer sitting downstairs in the Horseshoe. I, too, hope that we will have a future of windmills, electric cars, and levitating trains. But we have real-world problems today that need immediate addressing, and this is an opportunity for us potentially to keep some state parks open that would otherwise close. I present this matter to you, which went out of this room with bipartisan support last time. I think it's a right and proper action for this body to take this matter up and override this governor's veto. It's been some 30 years since that has occurred. It was, in fact, this governor when the event last occurred. It may be time for us to override this governor's veto, to let him know that we will be working as a legislature to find ways to economize and keep state parks open. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Blakeslee. Senator Harman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in strong support of this bill. I, like Senator Blakeslee, like many other members on this floor, strong supporters of our park system in California. It's a shame when there's a huge, long list of parks that are going to be closed for financial reasons. Earlier today, we passed out a bill authored by Senator Corbett where we allocated $1,000 to the Parks Department to try and help them with the transfer. If we can do something that is frankly that minimal, why can't we do something like Senator Blakeslee's bill is suggesting? And all it does is, before closing a state park, the State Parks Department has to offer counties and cities the option to take over the park for a period of 1 to 5 years. Hello? We can keep parks open that way if we let the cities and counties that may want to do that come forward and do it. Let them do it. And Governor Brown and his infinite wisdom decided no, that was not the right thing to do, and he vetoed the bill. I think we ought to send a strong message to Governor Brown that we support parks. We support parks. This should be, and was when this bill was approved on the floor, a bipartisan, unanimous vote to support this bill. Why not do it now? I don't want to close parks. I don't think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to close parks. Let's leave the parks open. Let's override this veto and send a message. Thank you.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Blakeslee sincerely for bringing to the floor a very important issue that we have not addressed for literally over 3 decades. The last legislative veto override goes back to, I think, around 1978 when Governor Brown was then in office. Over the years that I have been here, I have had at least one bill pass off both floors unanimously, garnering 120 out of 120 votes. I approached leadership to see if we might consider this to be a good bill to be the first override in 3 decades, and was told I should speak to the second caucus leader and see if we can find some common ground before we move forward. I'm not going to support this today, but I want to explain why. It has absolutely nothing to do with my support of parks. I would imagine almost every one of us here has a bill that had enormous bipartisan support, was vetoed, and we'd like to be in line for an opportunity to override a veto. I think if we're going to even consider, and keep in mind, a legislative override means that both parties come together to do something as an independent branch of government to disagree and override the executive branch. That means we need to work together. I would like to see, if we're going to consider any member's override, it doesn't have to be mine, it can be anybody's, that leadership come together, review all of the different bills, that we do this as a body, not unilaterally. I think there's a real process that has to unfold before we start doing this, because otherwise we're just shooting in the dark. So again, this has absolutely no attention to the content of your bill or the policy at hand, but much more the very historic process that I think needs to unfold, because this has not happened in over a generation. And I believe it should happen, because otherwise we as a legislative body abrogate our power to an executive branch and we lose some of our power. I don't think this is the way we should proceed.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Steinberg?
Yeah. Got Joel Anderson over.
Senator Anderson, your mic was up and then it was down and then now it's up again? Okay.
No, you take, I'll go last. Thank you, Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
I'd like to agree with my colleague from San Francisco. I'd like to also pledge that any bill of yours that I voted for, I will vote to override the governor on. I believe that if this body voted unanimously and that the Assembly voted overwhelmingly for the bill. That is the consensus for leadership to move forward. Because if we did go back, our leaders would say, let's have a caucus, and let's see, who's against this? Oh, that's right, we all voted for it. And we all voted for it overwhelmingly. So I believe that is the signal that these are the bills. And by the way, I did have a bill last year that Schwarzenegger vetoed that I wanted to override at the end. It was the IOU bill that would have protected taxpayers and made good on our name as legislators. I will pledge to my colleague from San Francisco that I will support any override that I voted in favor of. And I'd ask the rest of this body to do the same and follow my lead. Thank you.
Senator LaMalfa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just yesterday, the governor said in his comments that it would be good to return more of the authority and decision-making power back to the local level in education. And I commend him for moving in that direction here. When we have tough times fiscally, we need to give more autonomy, more decision-making to the people who actually know what's going on at the local level, not here in Sacramento or certainly Washington, D.C. This would provide an opportunity for people that want to, that have expressed in my district, and I know other colleagues' districts too, the desire to step forward and help save the parks in the area with their own ability to voluntarily do that on a short-term basis. We're not talking permanently. It's a good bill. We've heard impassioned speeches on this floor today and in the past to do what we can to help save the state parks. They're important to all of us. And so let's get over a hitch we might have here on how the procedure is done today, but the unanimity we have for a bill that passed without any opposition unanimously in this House and I believe the Assembly on this measure. So the governor may have had a revelation here in the off-season since he vetoed the bill on allowing more local control. When he said that about education, maybe we do an opportunity to be able to do that with state parks too. So I ask for this bill to be pushed forward and allow our state parks to have an opportunity this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator LaMalfa. Further debate or discussion? Senator Steinberg.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Any member of this House has every right to raise their mic and to seek the kind of action that Senator Blakesley is seeking today in the veto override of SB 356. But let me say where I stand very clearly as the leader of this House. The Constitution is very clear that the legislature has the ability, both houses, with a two-thirds supermajority to override a governor's veto. And where it is appropriate, where an issue is of great, great importance, we should always have the option of considering using the veto override. Though this issue is an important one, as Senator Leno points out, it is one of many bills that made its way through the process only to be ultimately vetoed by the governor. This is not, I will assert, a decision to be made lightly or a decision to be made by a member of the House that isn't part of the leadership. If we're going to override a veto in this House, it's going to be Senator Huff and I, in consultation with our colleagues, of course, that will bring such a measure to the floor of this House, period. I don't want to debate the merits. The bill is meritorious. I voted for it. I also voted for the revenue to avoid having to shut any parks in the first place. But I urge my colleagues uniformly to vote no. This isn't the bill. This isn't the time. And I would urge Senator Blakesley to introduce a new bill on the subject, work it through the process. I'm sure it will enjoy significant support as last year's bill did. And let us get on with trying to work cooperatively with the executive branch, never being afraid to fight when it's necessary, never being afraid to disagree. But we're in the third week of the session here. Let's keep it on a positive note. I urge a no vote.
Senator Blakesley, you may close.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Pro Tem. I really welcome the comments I think I've heard from virtually everyone. I think this is an important dialogue that needed to happen eventually. We have a system of checks and balances. We do not operate in a monarchy. We are not in a place where the legislature and its will, at least at the two-thirds level, should be lightly disregarded. And this is neither a Republican nor Democrat issue. This is an issue about the power of the legislative branch as it's been constituted in our Constitution, and to ensure that we use our powers in the same manner this governor freely and maybe perhaps cavalierly uses his to veto bills of members he may not like, or with veto messages that are unfortunately pointed and personal, and we saw that was the case not only with this governor, but with the prior governor. You need only ask Assemblymember Amiano about an example of such a thing. If we are to make a statement about this legislature's role, I think this is a proper forum to do it. I do take exception with the President Pro Tem's comments that we are to wait for two people to emerge from a smoke-filled room with their decision, and then we are to salute smartly and obey their commands. I still believe that...
Senator Blakesley, forgive me. Members, if I could have your attention, please. Relying on Mason's manual, there is the prohibition on personal comments directed at members rather than to the presiding officer, which are specific to the issue before the body. I would ask that you...
A presiding officer, I would argue that this is completely germane to the actions and the votes are about to occur, and I believe it is entirely proper to point out that if we are going to make a statement about this body's ability to take action with regarding to proper checks and balances, that if any member on this floor argue that this body should not act because this body should defer to their wisdom and their wisdom alone, or with one other person, it's only proper that I point that out to this body.
And Senator Blakesley, once again, the only request I've made of you today, sir, is that you keep the admonitions of Mason's manual in mind as you make your comments and keep them within bounds.
And all of them were. And if you would like to cite one that wasn't, I'm happy to address that with you directly.
Senator Blakesley, I believe you mischaracterized and misstated the comments made by the President Pro Tem earlier. I do not, as presiding officer for a moment, believe you are in any way limited from offering comment on the process.
I now recognize that I did make one remark that probably was not strictly accurate. Smoking in state buildings in California is not allowed, so it probably would not be a smoke-filled room.
There we go.
Having said that, I would like to move...
Senators? Senator Blakesley, you have the floor. We'll ask that the Senate give you its full attention. Let me ask you to proceed, staying on point, and I appreciate your willingness and ability to do so, sir.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to ask for an aye vote. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Senator Blakesley. Mr. Secretary, call the roll.
Alquist.
It's a 27-vote item, members. Forgive me. 27-vote item. Mr. Secretary, call the roll.
Alquist. No. Anderson. Aye. Berryhill. Blakesley.
Aye.
Aye. Calderon. Canella. Aye. Corbett. No. Correa. No. De Leon. No. DeSaulnier. No. Dutton. Aye. Emerson. Aye. Evans. Fuller. Aye. Gaines. Aye. Hancock. No. Harmon. Aye. Hernandez. No. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. No. LaMalfa. Aye. Leno. Aye. Ted Lieu. No. Carol Lieu. No. Lowenthal. No. Negrete McLeod. No. Padilla. No. Pavley. No. Price. No. Rubio. No. Runner. Semidian. Steinberg. No. Strickland. Aye. Vargas. No. Walters. Aye. Wolk. No. Wright. No. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee, no. Leno. Aye to no.
Call the absent members.
Berryhill. Calderon. Evans, Runner, Semidian.
Ayes 13, noes 22. The veto is sustained. Senator Blakesley?
Under motions and resolutions, I request reconsideration.
Without objection, reconsideration is granted. Ayes 36, noes 0. Members, I believe we have one other item to take up today. This is Assembly third reading, file item 97. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1413 by Assemblymember Fong, enacting to elections and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, in 2009, a measure was placed on the ballot for voters to consider authorizing the top two primary election system. At the same time that measure was approved, the legislature also approved a series of changes to the elections code implementing the top two-tier system. Unfortunately, those changes created a number of problems for the effective and efficient operation of elections. This bill makes numerous technical and significant changes to the elections code to provide a more efficient and effective implementation of California's top two primary election system.
Debate or discussion? Members, is there any objection to substituting our unanimous roll call on this item? Any objection? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 36, noes 0 on the urgency. Ayes 36, noes 0 on the bill. The bill is passed. Members, I believe that completes our business on the daily file. Returning to motions and resolutions, we have no items. Senator Wright, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
On condition of the file.
Please proceed, Senator.
Members, the other day, Senator Padilla was talking about his bill to extend the time in the redevelopment thing that we passed. Yesterday, Moody's, the bond rating agency, downgraded the bond rating of every RDA in California. Some $11 billion worth of bonds are now going to pay some $300 million more for the cost of borrowing. In addition to that, Moody's also said that depending upon how it unravels, they are withholding the right to downgrade it again. So what started off, as we talked about, as $1.7 billion, now $300 million of that is gone, and chances are we're going to lose another $500 million before that unravels. I think that that again places an urgency on what Senator Padilla's bill was looking at. There are a number of things that I think that need to be fixed, but I wanted to make clear that we understand that this is something beyond the confines of Sacramento, that people across the country are looking, and what we've just done is introduced risk into those bonds and made them less valuable. And before we get through at the rate we're going to end up not only not getting any of the money that we thought we were going to get, we're going to end up paying more than we started with before. So I again urge that we look at this carefully. We're going to have to make some review because we are rapidly losing money under the current system that we did. This isn't Rod Wright talking. This is Moody's, and they're the ones who set the cost of the bonds that we all have to pay. We just lost $300 million in one day in bond value on the $11 billion. And, by the way, they said that since some of the cities have a relationship with the RDA, that they're putting a flag on the municipal bonds of the cities separate and apart from the RDA bonds. So I mentioned that we're going to need to do something.
Thank you, Senator Wright. If there is no other business, Senator Steinberg, I believe the desk is clear. Forgive me, Senator Steinberg. One moment, please. Senator Keogh, for what purpose do you rise?
For announcement, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. President, just for members of the Appropriations Committee, we will meet immediately upon adjournment in 4203 with hopefully about a half an hour's worth of work we can dispense with the file. So immediately upon adjournment, 4203. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Leno, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
For purpose of announcement.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Budget and Fiscal Review Committee will meet 10 minutes after adjournment of the Appropriations Committee in the same room, 4203.
Thank you very much. Senator Steinberg? I believe the desk is clear.
Session will resume at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock on Monday. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. Members, as you've just heard, the Senate will be in recess until 3:30, at which time the adjournment motion will be made. We will reconvene Monday at 2 p.m. Without objection, we are in recess.